Okay. Right. Okay. Now I just want to copy this because they won't know. I gave them the other code, but it doesn't seem to want to work. Let me just quickly do this. Let me just Control C and put that on. This page. Enter. Okay. Right, so let's get this thing going. Oh, seriously. God.
That's on rotate.
It is on rotate. I don't know why it's doing this now. You know, I thought I had it all nicely organized. But in any case, let's organize this again. All right, we want to go with live. Here we go.
Right. Okay.
Right. And go live. Hi, everybody. I hope you can see us and that you are here. I pasted a new link for the YouTube video because just to make sure that the YouTube will work. So please have a look and see in the Facebook group what the YouTube link is. So I hope that you are there and that you can see us and that you can hear us well.
Hello. Yeah, I think my voice will be better this time around.
Yes, we've got a microphone for. We hope that the sound is a bit better this time. So, okay, everybody, it's nice to be back, and we hope to make this a very fruitful hour, where we could look at this topic that's of great importance to school leaders, and that is how to monitor and evaluate teacher performance in the school. Thank you, Henry, for being back with us again today.
A pleasure, Morris. Thank you.
And I was very pleased to see all the interest and how many people wanted to join us today. So let me just make that a little bit lower. That's better. Right. So let us just kick off by saying teacher monitoring and evaluation is a key role of a school leader. It's something that it's your core role as leading learning in the school, is to ensure that the students, the children, get the learning experiences that they're supposed to get. And I think that is the core purpose of monitoring and evaluating teacher performance. What do you think, Henry?
Yeah, you're right, actually. I think it's how you ensure that what is being said at the very beginning, it's what is implemented, and how you also ensure that the outcomes you established from the very beginning are met. And I wonder what standards. And so it's very important to have a monitoring system.
Yes.
Even though I don't like calling them monitoring system, but we'll get to that during the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, the word monitoring has negative connotations, right? But it's an expectation from many education departments, especially people who work in government systems, that they have to do this, and this would be in their own KPIs. Yes. So as much as we don't necessarily like the word monitoring, it's something that many people can't escape from. Yeah. So for the purposes of this conversation, we will call it, but we would maybe rather want to talk about teacher development and growth or teacher appraisals. But so yes, monitoring can sound very, very aggressive, right?
It comes from a background of project management,
yes.
And then the project hasn't got anything to interact with you. You're only observing and monitoring. But with teacher practices and teacher development, they have a say in the process, because what you observe might not be exactly what's happening. So they have to give you an input to build a comprehensive picture about what is actually happening and why it's happening.
Yes,
then
absolutely.
If you have that kind of a system, calling it monitoring actually takes away that value.
It takes away the growth aspect, right? It's like it's a once-off evaluation. So We in our EduLead course and in our leadership rubric, that evaluation of teacher progress and ensuring that teacher development is happening, and that teachers who maybe are struggling or given the opportunity to develop in many different ways is a key aspect of our course. And that's why we decided to pick this topic today, because a few people also wrote to us to ask how can we get you, give you some more guidance, and how can we support you. So I see a few people are sending us messages to greet. Mr. Rahmat, Doha, Rahadan.
Facebook now.
Yes, and thank you for your active participation in our Facebook groups as well. Okay, so let us start with some of the questions. We have a number of questions that have been sent in, and these questions are wonderful because it gives us an understanding of your problems, the issues that you're facing, and also a way for us to help address some of the specific questions that you might have. And I think let's kick off with Doha's question. How many times in a year must the teacher be evaluated? I think you're going to find that quite an interesting question.
Doha's question. How many times? So from the very beginning, I said from the first question, it's you have to establish the purpose for the evaluation. What are you evaluating and why are you evaluating it? Now, once you establish the purpose, it also tells you when.
Okay.
Because when now tells you how often would you evaluate and how often will you review. So I call it teacher performance appraisals rather than monitoring. So I'm not just monitoring, but I'm actually having a conversation with the teacher where we say, this is what we had to achieve this year. This is our targets. This is your role. This is your own KPIs. This is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to support you. So when do we review this? It could be a week, it could be a month, it could be a term, it could be a year. So it's something you agree and co-create and design. It's a signed document. Yeah.
I think the question here is also if you take the Malaysian system, principals, heads of school have to do a formal lesson observation of teachers or a formal evaluation of teachers twice a year. So I think it's also very much what you said. It's what is the purpose of this? Is this to do a formal lesson observation because it's required from you by the ministry, or do you view it as a developmental process that the teacher buys into and is part of? And I think sometimes you are caught in this bureaucratic nightmare. And another thing is that if you don't share this role with other leaders in your school, with your middle leaders and with your senior leadership team, you yourself as principal can't, under any circumstances, do this what you have described, because you might sit with 50 teachers, or some schools here have 120 teachers. So there's no way for you to get into that process.
Issue of quality.
How can you, let's say you're the principal, you still want to see the teachers in their classrooms, but you can't get into this developmental process. How would you go about? So imagine you being the principal of the school, and how would you do that?
So we are talking about the first thing is the transferring of agency of their development. So it has to be something around teacher leadership. So you might not necessarily call it teacher leadership, but it's how you transfer agency about what they control, what they teach, what they monitor, and what they evaluate. So there are three kind of purposes for any kind of evaluation. One is by diagnosis.
Okay. One is purposes. One is for diagnosis.
How are we teaching?
Yes.
Is it working? Should we change it? Should we, implement some new things? Second one is compliance.
Yes.
So are we doing what we said we're supposed to do? How often are we doing it? Is it linked to our payment? Is it linked to our own, whatever it is, but that is on the structure. And the third one is performance. How are we performing under the standards we have set for ourselves? So the principal has to understand these three things, and then make an agreement, an understanding with the teachers on how they are going to monitor or track or review their progress from the day they begin. So do we review your progress twice a month, once a month? It's something you decide with the principal. How do you also do this? You can also transfer it to the head of department or to the PLCs. Now, what you want to do is you want to delegate this or distribute this power to those who have kind of, they call them senior teachers, who've been there for quite a while, who understand the culture or the teaching methodologies. And you want to share this responsibility to everybody. So you have just the feedback, and then you can all develop interventions on those teachers that are struggling. You can't do everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So definitely the first very important point here is you must determine what is the purpose. Yeah. Secondly is that it should be agreed with the teacher. And I mean, it might be one hint that I would say is that, you know, for a school, it should not, you should at the beginning of the year have this meeting with your teachers and explain to them how this is going to work, get their ideas, get their input, and have a policy for the school. Because it's tough to have this for each and every, a different thing for a different teacher. But when you find that some teachers, as a result of the diagnosis, do not have some of the skills or are not implementing what they're supposed to be doing, you know, so their performance is not in line with expectations, you could then have a different specific plan for that teacher. More regular follow-up, more regular observations and discussions.
You see, we talk of differentiated learning for students. What about the teachers?
Yes.
We also need it.
Yes.
You can't say it's all throughout the system. Yeah.
It's a very true thing. I think, you know, we should never expect of the teachers to do things with their students that we don't do with them, right? It's so unfair. And it also helps them to understand the process better. So we need their buy-in, and, you know, takes us back to our very first webinar when you spoke about agency, right?
I actually wrote it down, the answers now. Yeah. Referring back to all those things, you can't have someone accept a change if they don't have ownership.
Yes.
They won't. They'll become control.
Yeah.
And that's why most monitoring and evaluation systems are being perceived as systems of control.
Yeah.
And punitive system where you just say, okay, you didn't do this today, I'll mark you off. No, performance reviews are there to help people become more performant.
Yeah.
So it's the way we say.
And I think it's not a simple, Dawa. It's not a simple question of just saying, we will observe you. We have to do this twice a year, because it can never be just twice a year. And if you know, it might be that they have 2 formal lesson observations twice a year, but the whole process is so much more than just going into a teacher's class and doing a lesson observation and making a judgment based on that. And I think that was also one of the questions that somebody asked. So let's go and let's have a look at what, let me just get our questions out. So I see Almira from Kyrgyzstan also asked the same question about how often do we need to monitor them. So she also asked, how can we make monitoring, so this performance management process or this teacher appraisal process, how can we make it more effective?
So my very, very first point is that you need to have a shift from teacher monitoring to teacher performance appraisal.
Okay.
The moment you change your mindset about that alone, it tells you that you have to understand what you're appraising. So what are you? It's like an appreciative inquiry. What am I going to find out that I can use as a leverage to encourage you?
Yes.
What am I going to find out that is going to indicate to me that things that you want to achieve, these things are serving as blocks or, you know, barriers, and how can I enable you to see them and move past them?
Yeah.
So how do you make teacher monitoring and evaluation systems, you know, more effective? You should need to have an engaging system with the teacher where they get into an effective practice of self-evaluation and peer evaluation.
Yes.
You could also add that by having a 360-degree evaluation where you introduce parental involvement and student involvement.
Yeah.
So it's how you bring every source of data together to inform you about what could make them performant.
Yeah. So I think it's that shift is so important.
Yeah, it is.
We are doing this so that we can ensure that you can grow in the process. It's not punitive.
No.
It's not to it's a question of us working together on ensuring at the end of the day that the students in your classroom are getting the learning experience that they deserve, that they can grow best through. So what are those barriers? What are the things you're really doing well that you can maybe share with others as well? So I think if people realize that there's something in this for me, then they will be more open. But at the same time, very important is reflective practice. Yeah. And that is something that should be part of the culture of your school. Children should reflect on their own learning. Teachers should reflect on themselves. And we should, I read this term and I really like it, deprivatize our classroom practice. Open the door and let our peers come in and observe and give us feedback. And I think that's something with my experience that I've seen teachers find extremely hard to do. If there's not a safe emotional culture in your school where people regard each other as critical friends rather than as being judged on their performance, and if people open themselves up to feedback, then the culture in the school will shift. Yeah. But if people see any feedback and respond to this in a negative fashion because they don't want to hear things about themselves that they might not be able to do that well, then you're never going to change the atmosphere. And I see this a lot in Malaysia, even for us as coaches going into schools. Some teachers just do not want any feedback. Don't tell me or they want to hear the good things, but they don't want to hear what they can't necessarily do that well. So you've mentioned the peer reviews, the PLCs, the self-review, self-reflection, which is a crucial element in development. And Almira, that's how you can use this data to actually make this a developmental process and not just an evaluation process.
And one thing I always want to add is the self-review itself is something which is developed by the whole school. It's like a checklist. Yeah. So you use the checklist, which is it's accepted by the whole school as a standard which we want to uphold our professional, behavior or attitude or teaching. And then you use that as a way to reflect on your own practice. I think it's a good way of getting people to get in tune to what they're doing right and what they need to change.
And I think that is, we have now in Kyrgyzstan and also in Lebanon, the new school year is starting in September. So this is a very good kick-off point, I think. If you don't have something like that in place, standards, what do we as a school community regard as best practice, and what are the standards we would want to uphold ourselves against? So what is that checklist, and work with the staff, bring them together and say, okay, well, in a lesson we expect to see this and this and this and this, and these are the ways in which we communicate with learners, and this is how we learn professionally. And this is our checklist of points, because if they come up and they also give input, then it's easier to hold them against it than for you to just come on the first day and say, here's a list, boom, this is what is going to happen in the school.
It needs to be co-created.
Yeah. But now, Henry, if they don't know what they don't know,
so they need experts to help, like you go into the school. The key thing is they should be open to want to change, open to want to develop, open to want to learn. You just like you're buying books or left and right. You wouldn't do it if you didn't want to. So they must have that desire first of all.
But you can't always. I think it's I think it was Noor who wrote about teachers who've been in the school for 15 years.
I like that one.
And they think they know everything and they're not open to this. So I think you also it's a wonderful thought to think all my teachers are open to learning and everybody wants to learn, but that's not the reality, right? So it's sometimes what I've seen is if they have such a fixed mindset and they've been in this state of learned helplessness almost for such a long time.
I like that.
Yeah. Then they will just reject any new idea or any new thought. But if they see the change in other teachers' classes, that's something that opens their minds. So don't expect all of the teachers to buy into this on the first day as well. So what would you like to say about that question?
This
is for Noor.
Yeah, I wrote the answer for Lebanon, right?
Yes.
I said start by changing the language. So it's more a cultural thing. And so old veteran teachers, they call them, come to a place of change when there was a message of an urgency for them to change their belief system, change their values, and change their attitude and actions. And it has to be tied to a reward system or a benefit which is bigger than them. So leaders need to have this way of negotiating and selling.
So are you talking about a material benefit?
Not necessarily. Psychological benefit as well. Social benefit, the kind of contribution they'll make to the school. But they need to have an understanding of how their involvement in that change will make them better, make them more recognized, make them more appreciative.
And that brings us again back to what we've said before, right? About buy-in. So, I mean, it comes back to the leader who has to be visionary and who has to be able to come up with that vision that people will feel excited about, whether it is improving learning in your country, whether it is for some people, it's for themselves. I want to be the best teacher. I want to be on the Star of the Week wall.
Because it reminds me of my own journey with the PLC. When I started teaching, I was teaching with people who taught me when I was in secondary school. So they were quite older than me. And me telling them, let's do it this way, it just doesn't make sense. So you need to give them the forefront to say, this is what we want you to do. This is how. And so they own it and then start doing it rather than you trying to push them to do it. So it's more of a pull than a push strategy.
One thing that I've read, and I always keep this I always share this with people, and that's those 5 building blocks of adult learning by this is Hoppe and Dana, Yendel, Hoppe and Dana. And to me, it made so much sense. When you want to introduce new learning in a school for adult teachers, first of all, you must recognize what the area for improvement is. I mean, it doesn't help to just go and do something that some people can already do well. So determining what's the need, then you give them that theoretical input, whether it's the workshop or articles to read or book to read or a video to watch or whatever. And they need to see it demonstrated. So somehow in the school, somebody must demonstrate it to them, because they're not going to do it if you can't show them that it can be done. And then there must be some incentive or push for them to practice it in the classroom. Once they've practiced it in the classroom and they see the change in the children, that's when their belief systems start shifting. It's not the other way around. You can't think, I'm going to give a workshop and people are immediately going to change their mindsets. It's never going to happen.
Change of structures, procedures, and processes to bring about changing mindset.
So let's look at another question. Do you want to pick one?
Me? Let's see. Okay, let's take this. So how can monitoring and evaluation of teachers' practices be sustained in schools? And the second one is how parents can be involved. I think I answered that as well. So the first thing is how can you sustain it? Like I just mentioned that already. Is the policies, structures, processes, and procedures and processes. How do you do that? If it's a one-off, if it's optional, if it's not tied to any policy in the school, it's not tied to any reward system, people will do it for a few weeks and abandon it. So there must be a system of control cycle where people go through a monitored program where the policies are reinforcing what has been said about the practices you've decided to do. And then there's a system that recognizes those who are doing it or rectifying the behaviors of those who are not doing it. So
it doesn't help. You can't just do this on a whim or by chance. You have to have a clear policy. And it brings us back to what we said just now. When you go into your school, everybody must know this is the expectation. This is our teaching and learning policy. You need to have something. It doesn't have to be a big document. It can be bullet points, right? But it needs to be something that everybody has. It's been communicated and they've agreed to this, right? So, and then there's a system that when who does the observations? How often is it done? How's feedback given? What do we do with the people that are exceeding, the people that are not doing what they are doing? So you have to have a system and a set of procedures and a result. There must be some kind of an outcome here for teachers.
So there's one I just sent to one school in Yaoundé in Cameroon. And I was saying, if their performances doesn't improve based on what they've identified find shortcomings, they've given them interventions and they're still not able to perform, they take them off because they're not willing to change.
Yeah.
So you must have action plans. You must really act. So people just, okay, this is real serious, and I must sit up.
Yeah.
Even though you just play around with it and then it goes, waste of time.
It's unfortunate, and it's also true that what gets measured gets done. Unfortunately, you have to and celebrate the successes and share the successes. But I think the other thing is we have to, and I think this was a question of Sultanat in Kyrgyzstan, who said, could you share with us the types of assessment and monitoring
tools?
And I think it's more than just a lesson observation. Assessing teachers' performance, you have to look at many different kinds of data and triangulate data, right?
So it's a big sea of information. From your class observations, from teachers themselves, from individual teachers, from head of departments, from students, from parents, and then from national results.
Yes.
So it's a whole
so it's not you can't, because I think somebody also wrote, teachers say that was Doha, who said teachers are saying, how can you judge me if you've only been in my class twice in the year? How can you make a judgment on that? And we are saying, hang on a minute, we're not saying it's just 2 lesson observations. A lesson observation could be a structured, formal process. Maybe it's something the government expects of you as well. But you have learning walks, you have student performance, you have feedback from students, you have teachers planning, you have students work samples, you have parent feedback, you have the head of department, you have other teachers. All this, all this gives you rich data. Yeah. Don't ever make the mistake of judging a teacher on a once-off, we've all, you can't in one lesson show off all your skills in any case. There's so many things you have to look at. Yeah. How is this teacher giving feedback to learners? How is this teacher? Do you have something that
I think it goes back to Mira's question. What criteria can you use to evaluate the work of teachers? And I say it's just open interpretation.
But do you think, do you list that down in your policy?
Yes, so in your policy document, so it's when you do the PLC, they do what they call the toolkit, the working toolkit. So you have to kind of identify the areas you want to monitor. You want to also identify the descriptions or the descriptors of all those areas you're going to monitor, and then put out standards. Who is delivering on standards, on acceptable standards, or below acceptable or exceeding standards. So there are 3 levels. So you have issues around planning. That's all. Everything that comes for teaching. You have things that come around teaching, things that come around classroom management, student engagement, relationship, parents engagement, your behavior as a staff, your contribution to the school development projects, and your attitude as a person, and the way you sell or you uphold the reputation of the school. So there are different angles. So you can have like 15 different dimensions, 10 questions in each. Yeah. And then that's just one source. Then you now go to students' data, go to parents' appraisal, you go to your own colleagues' appraisal. You come to your own appraisal from the checklist at the very beginning. So it's a very, very rich source of data, which when someone says you're monitoring them or evaluating them or judging them, it's wrong, because you're doing an appraisal of all these things. Yeah. And they can see it. It's transparent. It's very, very clear that, okay, you have not done this. This is why. You can see correlations with the outcome. You can see correlations with students' behavior. You see correlations with students' own feedback about you, even your own colleagues. Yeah. So it's not something which is hidden. Like you said, anything which is observable, anything which can be felt, that can be seen, is measured. Yeah. Yeah. So it's something you can't hide. Yeah.
So if I can imagine some people would immediately say, all these areas and 10 questions and all this, I don't have time to do that. Yeah. So what would you say to them?
So I always say to schools, when teachers are saying we don't have time for this, principals say we don't have time for this, I just pack my bags and I go. Because what you're saying is you don't want to do the work. Yeah. You don't want to understand. So I've just released a framework called Excel framework, and within 15 minutes, you have to use 5 different templates just for inquiry-based learning. And someone says, I don't have the time to learn. Then what kind of learning are you doing? It's memorization. It's the bank system of education where you say, read this, repeat this, Answer correct.
Yeah.
They don't need it. They just go to Google. We'll find all the answers.
Yeah.
Because we're not training our brains. We're not developing the brains to think. We are developing our brains to memorize things, and that's what schools are doing. When they start saying we don't have time, it's a red signal for me.
And it's the irony for me in this whole time thing. For teachers, for example, is that they say, I don't have time for students to do inquiry. We have to cover the curriculum. I'm sure you've heard this a lot of times, right?
Yeah, and I say it's about application and implementation.
Yeah, and if children understand a concept, you don't have to teach it again. So in many schools, they leave weeks and weeks for revision at the end of the year to basically just teach for the exam, but the next year the child has forgotten everything and they must start all over. So I think it's thinking about you as a teacher and your deep commitment to really making that impact on the child. But to come back to what we were saying is that it doesn't mean when you start off you have to have all these things, right?
No.
You know, it's too much, right?
You've always said this from the very beginning. It's scary because you can't build it up at once. It's something you grow progressively, and that's why you call it an extensive professional development.
Yes.
You're developing constantly. This is something I did 10 years ago, and you're still learning every day. I still learn new things out of it.
Yes.
So you don't say you don't have time as an excuse, but you get involved, start learning, start developing, start growing, and you start seeing the benefits.
Yeah. So I mean, you don't have to have to think
one question for the audience.
Yeah, you don't have to worry and think you now need to have 15 areas and 10 questionnaires and at 3 levels and however you're going to do it. But I think just begin. And in our EduLead course, we actually also suggest, at least if you do your learning walks, use surveys with parents, interview students, look at the student work, your lesson observations, analyze the student performance data. That already plus your PLCs. That gives you six areas already for triangulation.
This is what I love about PLCs, is that when you work within the PLC, you kind of identify a single area you want to develop in. It might be in planning, lesson planning. It might be in student engagement. It might be in classroom management. It might be in behavioral management. It might be in questioning. So you speak just a specific thing each year and develop. It's not something you do. You can't do all.
No, it's
but
impossible.
You're aware about it. But you kind of find one thing, and it's like a building blocks. You build the blocks every time. And so the PLC toolkit becomes richer and richer as you go along.
Yeah.
So you start small and then you grow big.
Yeah. So I think that's good. I think people can take a breath of relief that they don't have to do all of this at once.
I released the model on Facebook yesterday because I was talking to Professor Garner. He wants to talk about Malaysian's new science approach of teaching. And I was saying I use this approach, though not the way it is now, to teach chemistry.
Yes.
I can guarantee you, I had very less talking in my class because I struggled to talk, like I told you already. And my students did all the talking. They went and did all the experiments. But they had a framework of tools they were using to write all these things. And they were learning them by themselves. And so if you find places where students are given that responsibility of the learning that takes place in the classroom, you help them design that. They take ownership of it.
Yes.
And they learn beyond the curriculum.
Yeah.
And so when people say, project-based learning doesn't really fit, we don't have time, inquiry-based, I'm like, you don't have time? What you're simply saying is that you don't want to teach people how to think.
Yeah. And it's the same with teachers, right?
That,
It's almost as if it's a type of inquiry that you have to lead into your own practice. So, and you then engage your PLC members, or if your PLCs are still sort of in developmental stage, it doesn't mean that, you still can ask them to get that focus on one area. It could be a school-wide inquiry, or it could be the different PLCs focus on different things, right?
So KTJ, for example, they use a year to focus only on vocabulary.
Yeah.
A year in their PLC, but just on vocabulary and structure. Yeah. So how do students develop a sentence? What kind of vocabulary do they use? How do they build that vocabulary? Yeah. So it's very, very focused. And it's measurable because you can have a very, very specific outcome you're looking forward to. Then you can see if you're making progress or not, rather than just looking at things from a very, very big,
So bubble. Because I mean, the school improvement plans for the new schools, new term, I think improving teachers' practice in a particular focus area could also be something that could go into your school improvement plan.
Yeah.
And then your monitoring or your teacher development process can be structured around that, so that, I mean, we're not trying to say a teacher must now suddenly have everything, but these are the 3 areas or the 2 things that we feel is absolutely essential, and this is what we're going to do this year.
Good. So let me just put in the perspective of, parenting. Again, I always use parenting. Now imagine you're a parent, which you're a leader, you're kind of raising up your staff. Now your child starts scrolling. What will be your expectation? For them to stand, not to run.
Yes.
For them to stand. So you're expecting those definitely stand in the future and run, but at the moment you want to focus on them being able to stand firm. So we want to have, an appraisal platform that has a progressive idea about how we develop as people. What is the next zone of proximal development I can achieve with this person? And what kind of support would they have? You want to have that, that, because nobody comes fully formed.
Yeah.
It's a developmental process.
And it makes your life exciting, isn't it? I mean,
very good, because they see the progress.
Yes.
They see the results as well.
Yeah.
And then you start seeing things happening. And then before you even know it, they see this process out of you. You don't need to supervise them. You don't need to control. They'll start telling you, oh, can you look at this, check this out and see.
Yeah.
It works well.
And that's I think one of the key lessons here is that we talk about assessment for learning and ongoing assessment processes in the school, but a principal should do the same with the staff. The leadership should follow the same for the staff. The one thing that frustrates adults a lot is if they are treated all in the same way. So, you go to professional development and everybody gets the same, even though they might be very competent in that area. They're all forced to attend the session, and you sit there with these negative people who just, I mean, if that's your situation, use those people to become the coaches of ones that don't know how to do it. But don't force them to go through, you've got to really know your staff. And that takes me back to 6 Secrets of Change, where one of it is really love your staff. And I mean, you really have to care about those people, right?
People first.
Yeah. I just saw a question or a comment by Mr. Combo, where he says that in some private schools, teachers' evaluation is determined by the parents. And, that is a very dangerous thing, right?
Actually, the person who asked the question, that ring a bell of caution.
Yeah.
The moment you introduce parents into an evaluation process, make sure you begin from the very onset. Because what happens in school is planning, teaching, delivery, assessment, and then feedback. Parents must know how the thing is being taught.
Yes.
If they're not involved, they don't involve them.
Yeah.
They've been tried. Because what you're doing, you're causing chaos. You're trying to frustrate your teachers by someone who's external, who doesn't understand the whole process. It's all like monitoring. Someone who doesn't understand the process and comes and says, oh, so you're sitting like this. Why are you sitting like this? You don't understand what happened before.
Yes. Yesterday you sat like that. At least you're sitting like this now.
Making judgment without understanding the crux of the matter.
So how do you involve, what would you get from parents? You mentioned the 360 evaluation process.
So parents have a checklist, which is also developed with agreement of teachers.
And
the leaders. Yeah. What do parents want to see that can contribute to the learning of the students? So it has to do with homework, quality of homework, whether, if it was intensive, if it was good, if it was useful, quality of the students' report about the teachers at home, quality of so it's just about organizational behavior aspects of the teacher with respect to teaching. So what are those key behaviors teachers have performed that parents have seen as a result of their engagement that are geared towards learning for their children?
So the kinds of, if you were to send out a survey, the kinds of questions you ask, you have to be very careful that you don't ask questions that could be misused or that could just be because the child doesn't like the teacher, gets twisted against the teacher.
So questions involving planning, questions involving teaching, questions involving delivery, questions involving assessment.
Yes.
Stops there.
Yeah.
You must pick one.
But parents also need to be involved, I think, much more in being educated in, if you want to move from a rote learning, memorization approach to a more inquiry-based, you can't expect parents, parents are going to come and say, where's the homework, or why didn't you do this page in the textbook, and immediately start criticizing. You've got to actually inform them and involve them in the reasons why you're changing, the benefits for their children, what they can expect. Else you are also going to run into a lot of trouble and negative feedback.
It reminds me of the first webinar I had about principals needing to be courageous, to stand for what they believe and to know exactly what they want to do.
Yeah.
So you need to have all of that. If not, you'll be putting yourself in deep waters.
Yeah, and you definitely
they're your main clients.
So you here's a question. If this were a part of what if your school policy, but you also have a school, most of your students live in residence. So the parents are not that involved in the teaching. And I mean, they don't see their kids maybe over weekends, maybe once in a year or twice a year.
Yeah.
Would you still, how do you involve parents then in that case?
Yeah, so parents, it's more of a summary. It's more of a summary. It's more like an opinion. It's not something I really consider.
Yeah.
Because parents, you don't stay there. They don't stay in school. They don't know what's happening. They don't know what even happened. They receive information from someone else, and then they make a judgment. So you're using the information from parents just to corroborate or to kind of highlight certain things.
Sort of like a part of this triangulation process. I mean, you want to see that it's not really an outlier, and then you would look at it.
Confirmatory value rather than exploratory value. You don't want to use that a lot. If not because you have parents.
So Mr. Combo, that's a dangerous thing. Yeah, if in schools, if teachers are hired and fired based on parents' feedback, that is a very, very dangerous thing.
It's a bad thing for him as well as a principal, because you need to protect your teachers. Now, mark you, some parents are very influential in society, and they can change the dynamics of your school if you give them a lot of influence in the way schools operate. And it'll be kind of again a challenging thing if you kind of break the equity and fairness you give to other parents who don't have that same level of power.
Yeah, and it's always the balance, because you want parents to be involved and want to be seen as partners in their children's development. But at the same time, they can't be the ones that are dictating because they're not in the school. But so you do need to have a mechanism where they have a voice, but they also have to understand that. That voice has to be within boundaries, right?
Of course.
Okay, so let's look at another question. Do you have one that you want to address?
So leaders of learning function, core function is monitoring. I think you started with that, right? Yeah. How is division of weight of appropriate assessment teachers? What professional competence must be greater in the school? E.g., attitudes or teaching competencies. So this is a good one.
Okay, which one is that? This is from Sari Pratiwi in Indonesia. Mm-hmm. And she says, how is the division of weight appropriate for assessing teachers? What professional competence must be greatest in the school, the attitude or the teaching competency? So is it attitude or is it knowledge of teaching?
Yeah, so my answer there was about it must align to your strategic purpose of your school. So the school that develop themselves, they want to focus on maths.
Yeah.
They want to be outstanding in English, in drama, in music. When you establish a mission and vision for your school, it tells you what kind of things you'll be leveraging on, which kind of things you'll be focusing on, what kind of things become important, critical, and very, very useful. So while both of them are quite important, your mission and vision for your school will determine which one you focus on. That'll be my answer to that.
So your mission and vision of the school will determine it, but at the same time, attitude versus skill.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think you can say the one is more important than the other, because you can be a very competent teacher with all the knowledge and skills in the world, but you have a terrible attitude and you've got that don't tell me what to do. Yeah. I mean, I'd rather work with a teacher who has a positive attitude and who's open to change and who has a growth mindset, and who might not have all the competencies, because that can be developed, then I have somebody who's this master at whatever they are, but they have no engagement, no openness for change, no support for colleagues. I'd rather not have those people in my school. So
that's a desirable thing you want to do.
Yeah.
But if you look around schools and companies or organizations, you'll find companies where people don't have positive attitude. And they operate like that's their modus operandi. They operate like that, and they prefer different kinds of people with and you'll find this more with IT developers.
Yeah,
IT developers,
Yeah.
or high skill corporations like consultants. They don't really have a good attitude. They don't care about you. You want them to deliver, and then that's it. So it depends on the on the mission and the vision, because it now tells you what kind of norms you're going to operate under, what kind of values you're going to operate.
But I think in a school, I mean, schools, I think there are some core values and some core things that you would always want to see in a school, right? You definitely, I think you are off the screen. Can you maybe
I probably think the question depends on, is it something you want to keep? Are you recruiting, or are they inside? Because if it's about recruiting, then you want to kind of understanding which one you are leveraging. But if they're already in your school, I am still not quite clear about how to go about it.
Well, it's a tough one, right? Yeah. I think your attitude will show up in the way you perform.
Do things, yeah.
So if your attitude is that of growth and support and putting the needs of the children first, then your skills will develop and grow. Yeah. And I think people who have these skill sets but the negative attitudes will also not be open to supporting colleagues, coaching colleagues, and therefore would not do very well in their performance appraisal in those areas. Yep. And I think then you just have to decide what is your willingness, what is your tolerance, right? Yeah. So this is not acceptable. If you reach this level, then sorry, despite how competent you are. But then you also have these teachers like math, science, these highly sought after, they're like, I don't care, I'm sought after, and I'm not going to change my attitude.
Because if you look at literature on collaboration, and you look at literature on bullying in schools, what you find is that those who end up leaving the school or resigning early are those who've been bullied or pushed by people with bad attitudes. Those with bad attitudes with high level of skills are those who are always retained and maintained.
If you just go.
Yeah, so it makes a difference. Yeah. And this is where the challenge comes from: is which one are you going to hold on to as your guide? So your mission and your value statements will guide you to decide that, are we willing to let this guy go with all the skills he has, and are we willing to sacrifice the good results we're having for his attitudes, or can we tolerate it?
Yeah.
So it's you determine that.
And I think it's also there's that whole thing of the tipping point, right? Yeah. So in change management, you're not going to win everybody over also in the beginning, right? So, you have to go through that evaluation process with each of your staff members so that against those competencies that you've agreed on, where does each person sit? And then eventually you're going to have to make those tough decisions. If that attitude is contained and does not necessarily impact on the greater good of the school or contributes to the greater good of the school because the results are great, I mean, you're going to have to sit and make tough decisions, right?
Because it comes back to outcomes and income.
Yeah, especially in private schools. Yeah, that's income is your owner will always put that.
Yeah, it's a very tough one. Question 2: What enough data can tell how I can evaluate the teacher? So I think it's asking the questions we've addressed about data sources and all the dimensions you consider. Yeah, which might be quite overwhelming as well.
Yeah. Okay. Here's one from Meli in Indonesia. How can you evaluate that the teacher is using differentiation of learning for learners' needs? Are they using differentiated teaching methods? How will you know as a leader when you're doing an evaluation or observing? I think it's quite easy to pick that up. The first thing is when you walk into a classroom and all children are doing exactly the same thing, that's your first sign that they're not doing it, right? I'm not saying it's always wrong, but I'm saying that is a warning sign. If you walk into a classroom, it's a clear indicator. Another thing would be a work study. You look at students' work. Yeah. You look at the planning. Did the teacher make any kind of provision for differentiation? You can interview students. You can look at whether the poor performing students are in fact improving or not. If they're not improving, that's something that you could follow up on. So Millie, those are the kinds of things that you would be looking at when you are
look at the tests she gives or the exams she gives, because it's planning, teaching, and evaluation. So you can see in all three phases.
Yeah.
Differentiating this, even though then it doesn't exist.
Yeah. It's a tough one if your school has to write government exams that has no differentiation. So like in Tanzania, for example, and I know that I'm sure it's the same here in Malaysia, definitely. The annual examinations, the SPM, the large examination. So I think in Tanzania, it's Form 2. That's a big countrywide examination. There's no differentiation in that examination. I mean, you get it as it is. So how do you prepare your learners? Many teachers say, why would I do differentiation? They all write the same exam. But the point is, if they can't even read or write, what's the use of giving them the same as a child who's doing, rather support that learner at the point where they are so that they can move to a next. But that's another topic altogether. I mean,
I always get not angry, but I'm like, oh, you said I can't do. Why should we? I'm like, is it about you?
But you hear it all the time. You hear it all the time. I can't. I don't have time. I'm not allowed. The ministry is not giving us. You just it's something that's echoing through the system, and I call it the biggest excuse that people hide behind. It's the easiest way to try and absolve yourself from the responsibility is to say I can't. Because you are the only one that is making that decision, right? And as a leader as well, I mean, you are making that decision. Okay, let's see. Okay, we talked about how parents can be involved. Okay, apart from, this is Mr. Combo, apart from learning walks, we collect teachers' documents.
I like this one.
Oh, the top one, sorry. No, leaders of learning's core function is monitoring and evaluating teaching. Should data gathered be displayed publicly? Oh, that is a good question. Yes, what do you think?
Yes, of course. Where else you want to put it? It should be displayed. It should be transparent. It should be displayed. It should be accessible by everybody who's there, so they can all see how much progress is being made, where interventions can be placed, and where they could relax in certain things. So it's very important to have it transparent and open.
If the data gathered is gathered according to an agreed process, if the focus that you are looking at is an agreed focus that everybody is bought into, and if you also communicate this with your staff right from the beginning, that this will be made public, right?
Yes.
Because I think you can't not tell them and then suddenly, all of this is just out there in the staff room. They have to know. And I think that is quite important, right?
Okay, maybe I assumed that it was a norm.
Yeah, no, that's not a norm.
Because I was saying, if it's analyzed, it's so it's not necessarily the data itself, but it's a summary of the
findings,
the dashboard of the data. Yeah. So it's something has to be very
So for example, when let's say you're focusing on a very particular element of teaching and learning. It could be around positive environment or inquiry-based learning or cooperative learning, whatever it is, and you do a series of learning walks for 3 weeks, you should analyze that data. It should be communicated. It should show the teachers, whatever, in whatever way, in this grade it's done more effectively, or in this subject area, or this is the area that nobody's performing well in. You have to share this information, else they will always be suspicious. What are you doing? Why are you walking around? What are you looking for? But they should know what you're looking for, and they should know that the results will be discussed.
So this is why I think that from the very onset, from the beginning of the school here, all these things are laid out.
Yeah.
The toolkit is understood by everybody. This is how we function. This is our culture. So maybe I approach the answer or the question assuming that this is what is normal. This is just normal.
It's not normal.
And you're telling me it's not normal. So it's something which. Because I'll ask you a question. We're talking about monitoring, for example. How do you know your blood sugar level has reduced? He won't see it. And how does your doctor help you to tell you how to make amends for that?
Yeah.
He has to see it. So the data has to be shared by all those who are involved in the process.
Yeah.
The students have to see it, the teachers have to see it, and the administrators have to see it, because it is from there that we have a collective understanding of where to redirect our efforts.
And you will then, I think when you start doing this, you will also realize where the gaps in your data is. Because if you just want to put up one element and you're going to start saying, but hang on a minute, this data that I've collected says this, but reality is actually something else. So I need more data to understand this better.
And data for me always pushes a thing I call the CAR.
Yeah.
CAR is CAR, is commitment, accountability, and responsibility. The moment people can see an appearance of their data, of what their actions reflect, they become more committed, they take more accountability of what is happening, and more responsibility about how they could make it better.
I love this. I'm going to repeat this. So data pushes the CAR, and the CAR stands for, the C is for commitment, A is for accountability, and R is for responsibility. So I love that. I mean, and
we have the TAR actually. I can show you all the templates I've been building.
Yeah.
Transparency, accountability, responsibility. People gain ownership.
Yeah.
Students will even help you do it. And before you even start doing the reviews, they'll say, "Oh, I think we should do this next month." And they ask them why. They can justify because they can see it.
Yeah.
But if you hide it, then it's not good.
No, I think it's. I mean, we do it in the class. Well, even in the classroom, there's also always a debate about it's all about your intent and what you intend to achieve by doing it. You don't intend to humiliate people, or you don't intend to. It's about growth, and it's about working towards our vision and what we want to achieve. So it always needs to be in a positive sense.
Yes.
I attended this training by Stephen Covey when I was in the Emirates, and he came in. I was very lucky to go for this training course. And one of the things that really stuck with me was he spoke about a South American airline that was failing. And the way that they managed to do this is they called all the different divisions together, and they said, okay, what is the thing that we all need to work that's going to make our airline succeed? And they all came up with on-time arrival, because they were always late, and then passengers didn't want to come anymore. Then every division, so I'm seeing it as like the PLCs, came and said, what can you do to make sure that we arrive on time? So the cleaners would say, okay, we'd make sure that we stand at the airplane when it lands, and we time ourselves. And the pilots would say, we do this, and the ticket sales would say. And then every month they published the data.
That's the CAR.
And that's the CAR, right? And as they achieved those targets, and everybody could see these needles rising, they were more enthusiastic and more enthusiastic. And that company, I don't know which airline it was, it's one of the most successful airlines now in South America. So it's about, and it brings us back to the vision. It brings us back to the strategic plan. It brings us back to what do we want to achieve. We don't observe teachers for the sake of pleasing the government. We do it because we want to achieve growth in our school. And I always think with observations, I always say it's not about you, it's about the children. I'm here to see how engaged are they. I'm looking at them. I'm looking at whether they get chances to ask questions. I'm looking at them to see whether there's their learning needs. I'm not here to judge you. I'm looking at how they respond to you, how they are given feedback. Do they have, so that helps to take the thing away from the teacher feeling I'm being judged.
Yeah. And it also reflects to what extent your relationship with them is solid.
Yeah. What do you think about teacher portfolios as part of evaluation?
Yeah. It's part of self-assessment, part of it. Self-assessment as well.
That's what we have in our EduLead program. We have portfolios of practice where the leaders have to upload the examples of work, and that gives us something tangible to look at, right? So,
in fact, as Stella Maris, I used to say, when teachers complete a learning target they set for themselves, they should have a testimonial and a celebration for them.
Yes, and that's another very important thing.
So they you just get to a point where it becomes second nature of them.
Yeah.
But
So
it takes time to
how do
build.
we celebrate? How do we celebrate this? And that comes back to agency, and it comes back to what different people want, right? Some might want to be given a certificate. Some might want to be on Teacher of the Week.
Yeah.
Some might want a financial reward. Some might want to be given a leadership position.
Time off.
Time off.
Things.
There's a lot of different things that. But I absolutely agree with you, because some people just feel I do all this work and nobody ever sees it. Nobody ever gives me any feedback. But you do get that a lot from if you work in your peer groups and in your PLC groups, right? Because the principal can't see what everybody's doing all the time. So if you get that validation from your peers and that then gets fed up, that's a mechanism to do it. So let me just say, I'm looking at the comments from the live feed. How many of you are? If you have some questions that you want to share with us right here at the end of this webinar. I see Mr. Buheru sharing the data increases the possibilities for solving problems as thinking capacity increases through sharing. Yes, it's about thinking at the end of the day, right? Thinking, reflection, taking ownership. Daddy, glad to see you there. Do you have a question for us? Or anybody else that wants to ask us a question that you would like to have answered? I think we have addressed most of the questions that were shared. Jimiati asked, what would be effective monitoring evaluation on a weekly basis? Well, I mean, a principal can't assess every person on a weekly basis, but could gather the feedback from the middle leaders and the PLCs, and could do some learning walks on a regular basis.
So PLCs that have online presence, it's very, very useful, because at the end of the day or end of the week, they always upload some of the things, some of the reviews, and the principal can have a check or a look.
Yeah.
You can engage with that rather than waiting for the reports to be submitted. So
having online feedback, I think, is really important. Yes, absolutely. Okay, another one. Is there anybody else that has a question for us? Let's see if I can scroll. I can't really scroll back and see what the previous comments are.
Let me see if I can join myself.
Because it's already an hour. You can't believe how quickly time flies, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
When you're having fun.
Yeah. How can you as a leader help a teacher to improve a performance after being evaluated? I think we have addressed that by saying that they need to get the feedback. They need to know what were the standards and whether they're performing on standard, below, or above. Yeah. And there needs to be some follow-up. Yes. Right? If they are doing extremely well, how are you going to reward this person? If they're not performing on standard, what action is going to be taken? Who can support that person? And if that person, if this is the third or the fourth time, you're going to have to start, and you have to document this so that you can actually take action.
This is where peer coaching and peer mentoring comes in very handy, because you kind of tie them up with people who become accountable for their own development.
Yeah. What I did in one school in the Emirates, and it worked so well. I mean, even it's been 10 years since I've left, and it's still the school that everybody comes to visit when they, with the government. They had we looked at certain, we did that thing of what are the expectations, what's the teaching and learning policy, what do people want to, what do we want to see from teachers? And then they made this beautiful big poster thing in the reception area, with all the pedagogical elements, all the things. And then the teachers who did well, they would place their photograph on like a tree and on that branch. So let's say somebody was very good at giving feedback to students, or somebody was very good at inquiry-based learning or whatever. Then the teachers could go and look at the tree and see who are the ones who's on the tree, and they can reach out to that person to say, okay, I see that you've been recognized. And we try to give as many teachers, find something good in as many teachers as possible. Right, so a teacher might not be brilliant at everything, but their classroom displays are fantastic. Or somebody might not be that good at that, but they were very good with their relationship with the student. So you would have 20 teachers on that board, and that would grow and continue to grow, So that was a good way of doing it.
I think the challenge I see with it's how leaders use data.
Yes.
School data, they kind of miss it.
They miss the boat completely. A lot of data is gathered, but data is not evaluated or analyzed.
I'm actually thinking of writing a kind of an e-book on that, because I see people just, what do you do with all this information? How do you use it? But they don't actually put it into practice.
And the problem is, if you have like a system like here, you input, let's take attendance data. And I've seen this in so many schools. They input the data now in the system, so the ministry gets the system. Or in a school, they have books with, the class leader carries the book, and then, the teacher signs it. And they gather all this attendance data. And then you say, so what does it tell you? What have you learned from this? Oh, maybe you should start, and even teachers' attendance, right? Oh, some teachers are always absent on a Friday or on a Monday. I mean, are you looking at this stuff? Or is there a correlation between teacher absenteeism and or certain subject groups, even punctuality in the classroom? I mean, that data tells you something. And if you can't use the data, then don't gather it.
The ministry is it.
Yes. So
that's a big problem. How to use and collect data. Yeah, we could do a session, or we could give me a month or two. I could produce the handbook and see.
Yeah, we could actually, Coco. Sorry for my dog. She's so naughty.
Yeah.
We are continuing. NAMA has indicated that we will continue with the training next year, which means that I have to confirm that, but that was the agreement. So that would mean 3 in-country training sessions, and we could make one of those sessions about data. And really, because we have done a lot about data already, but in the first year it was so much. We gave the coaches so much information about data and performance management and leading learning and change management. It's so many topics, It was just,
1 year.
It's too much for 1 year.
We didn't learn anything.
But it was like an awareness. That was year 1, was getting aware of the various and multiple components of skills that a leader needs to have. And the idea was then it's a 5-year program that will dig deeper and deeper in certain issues. So maybe using data and digging deeper into data will be a good one to look at next year.
Yeah, because
that one and digging deeper into PLCs, I think those 2 are 2 areas that we definitely can benefit a lot from. So I think that brings us to the end. We've been with you for 1 hour and 10 minutes. If you were not able to watch the live webinar, you can watch it. I will post it, and please write some comments, because those comments that you write will influence whether you're going to get a certificate or not. And thank you very much for being with us, and you're welcome to continue writing some questions and sharing questions. We will also publish the answers to the questions in this month's EduLeader. Thank you, Henry, for being here with us as usual and adding that depth of understanding. And
I'm also learning.
We are looking forward to our next webinar, which we will still do. Hopefully we can do one in, can't believe it's September already. What's happened to the year? Thank you, everybody. It's nice seeing you, and we will meet up again soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good. No, nice.
Stop. I think this one is a bit of a mess because I changed the...
And stay on. Okay.